Welcome to the Black Swan Yoga Podcast. My name is Madeline Chen, and I'm really excited to dive into the wild world of the mind today. I have a particular love of the mind and psychology. Growing up, I was so fascinated about how the mind works and, why one day I would be waking up feeling in a funk or blue, and another day I would be feeling so wonderful. It was always so intriguing to me to just think about the mind, and it led me to the practice of yoga, and it also led me to developing my pursuit of higher education and studying psychology in undergraduate college. So I love the mind and the psychology world. And it's really fascinating that in a lot of ancient practices and traditions in yoga and other, mindfulness-based religions or practices, there's so much information about the mind and how our psychology really affects our perspective on the world and who we are, how we interact with others, and XYZ. So before we dive too deeply into it, I just want you to take a moment and soak in and receive and honor the fact that you are amazing. The mind and how it interacts with the body and how unique each of us are is so amazing. They say your mind and your perspective is essentially like a thumbprint. It is completely unique to you. And while we are all so similar, we have the basic, foundations of needing love and connection and having fear and insecurity. The way in which our minds have created these intricate webs of our own understanding of the world and how we process things, we're all so very different, and it is fascinating. So today I want to dive into mindfulness practice and starting to observe ourselves to find freedom, really. In the yoga practice, in one of the traditional yoga texts, the Bhagavad Gita, it's written and described that we have two parts of our mind. And one part of our mind is the thinking mind. And this is the one that we're most aware of and living in our day-to-day, especially before we start to pursue greater mindfulness or a yoga practice or things that can help us to, broaden and open up our perspectives. So this thinking mind is really our human and animal mind combined. It makes up how we understand the world and our perspective and all those things I've been saying. And it's our part of our mind that makes judgments and assessments and fears. It's the part of the mind that is wondering, well, what if this happens? Or what if that? Or, is my life going to turn out how I want it to? Or can I achieve my goals? Am I loved? Am I accepted? It has the ability to really draw us down into this dark hole of fear and anxiety and worry. But it also has given us the ability to make strong judgments and calls on our entire life, like what you have chosen for yourself, what you pursue, where you have gone to get to the place where you're at today. Based on all of the things that maybe you didn't choose, other people might have chosen for you, but also the choices that you have made, whether you were very aware of them or the choices you made were maybe a little bit more subconscious. So the thinking mind is finite. It exists while we're alive. It's human or animal in nature. The second part of the mind is the observer. And the observer is described as this broad, expansive consciousness that essentially allows us to take a bird eye view over situations. It allows us to take a step back and make assessments calmly in a place where we are less attached to the things that we love and, maybe are even addicted to, or the things that we are really fearful of and really averted to and have a strong boundary against. The observing mind is the place in the yoga practice where we are striving to live the most frequently. And, in all these different practices of meditation or yoga, trying to reach enlightenment or have this, sense of clarity where we live our lives in a sense of freedom, breaking free from our own cycles of suffering. Becoming aware that we can even have these two different parts of us is one of the biggest steps to finding that freedom for ourselves. So you have the thinking mind that, I don't like to think about it as it being less than, because it is our human experience. And while we may, have things that we are challenged by or things that we want to work on for ourselves, they're really the building blocks of how we can find greater strength and wisdom, and how we can really move from the place of being alone and separate to connecting with others and even helping and enlightening others and sharing our heart, our love, the truth. So while we have this kind of animal and human nature in our minds, we can look at them in a way that is, okay, my animal mind keeps me in this box of reaction, or my human mind keeps me wondering, what if this happens? What if that happens? And those are both of those things are really like hamster wheels that we can get on and repeat. And in the religion of Buddhism, it's referred to as the wheel of samsara. And in a, abstract type of way, the wheel of samsara is really the cycle of being born, living, dying, and being reborn. So essentially, it's the cycle of reincarnation, or this philosophy that we are on a hamster wheel or a wheel going round and around of experiencing whatever it is we need to learn until we can free ourselves from that practice. So, that ancient wisdom or ancient philosophy in Buddhism can kind of translate into a more modern approach of looking at our life and the habits we have in our minds and the way in which we have a lot of repetition and, diving more into the observer, we can start to observe ourselves and start to see, what are my patterns? And where am I repeating my own suffering? Where am I continuing my own suffering? And instead of empowering myself and becoming the strongest version of me, where am I kind of victimizing myself and keeping myself in this container or hamster wheel? And in the yoga philosophy and practice, this idea of these bad habits or patterns of suffering that we get into are called samskaras. And samskaras are deeply rooted in our mind. They are like the deep roots of a tree, 100-year-old, even older than that tree, really deeply rooted and anchored in to our being. I find it so fascinating that we're in a day and age where there's constantly new scientific research going on. And there's all this new information about cellular memory, or how we have this kind of state of perception and reality that is, of course, a product of all of our life experience, but also a product of our ancestors' experience. What our parents experienced, what their parents experienced, and so on and so forth, has really been passed on generationally. So, at a DNA or cellular level, things are being expressed in our body, whether it is a simple, the genes that are passed on, not so simple, very complicated, the genes that are passed on in our lineage. But also they're starting to realize that along with the genes that are passed on, the mind, the mindset, the experience, the deeply rooted sense of fear or trust, or some, complex web of both of those things existing. So it's so fascinating that, again, we're in this area where there's so much new research on everything, our human experience. And I find it kind of funny because I think we're so curious. And as a species, we are constantly wanting to find answers and to have understanding. And essentially, we want at the core to find happiness, right? So we want to have like this perfect mathematical equation or perfect prescription on how to be the happiest and the most free or the most successful, whatever our goals are. We're constantly searching for how to get there, how to find answers to get there. So it's really, I think, parallel that we're in this heavily focused on science area day and age where we're so keen on understanding and living so much in our minds that we are doing more and more research than ever, and we know more than ever. And we're even, I think, getting to the point where there's so much information and so much research that they can be conflicting sometimes. Like I was having this conversation with a couple of friends this week about coffee. And coffee, there's research on it that says coffee can prevent colon cancer or help you to, obviously have more energy and caffeine, things like that. But there's research that show coffee has benefits for our health at a moderate level. But there's also research that says coffee is a drug. It's something that we become addicted to, like cocaine or other drugs, and withdrawing from that can cause negative effects and, hormonal shifts in the mind and all these things. So we're in this place where we have so much information at our fingertips, but it can be overwhelming sometimes and even to the point confusing. So all of that really is represented and under this umbrella of the thinking mind. And we're trying to understand and label and just have this boxed up answer for things. And then the other part of us, the observing mind, is maybe less tangible, and it's more of our intuition, our innate wisdom. When we are at a place of our most calm, trusting, happiest, most love-filled self, this observing mind can step forward and lead the way for us. So when we come back to this concept of samskaras, which are these really deeply rooted habits in our mind, bad habits really, that keep us in our cycle of suffering, we have to tap into the observing mind. We have to use that superpower we have to take a step back and look at the whole picture of what's going on in our lives, to try to realize, okay, what are my samskaras? What are my deeply rooted bad habits in the mind, in action? Where can I uproot these things over time through hard work and dedication so that I can find my freedom? And, I was having a discussion about samskaras the other day in our yoga teacher training, and our certifications we do at Black Swan Yoga are not just about becoming a yoga teacher, but more so about personal development and growth and how we can really open up into deeper parts of ourselves in our minds and our bodies to live our most fulfilled, beautiful life. So we were having this conversation this past week in teacher training, and, just being able to have deep philosophical conversations with other people is mind-blowing because we all have different perspectives, right? If you think about each of us as our own complex web or compilation of building blocks of how we understand the world and who we are, we're all different expressions of human. So when we combine our forces and get together, we can all help propel each other into, our best selves, higher consciousness. That's why when you're stressed, you call someone you love and care about to get feedback, to get support. We're not meant to be living isolated and to have all the answers ourselves. We're meant to connect with others. So we're having this awesome conversation in teacher training about samskaras. And, I described them in that setting as samskaras can be thought of as lies. They're these ideas in our minds that we think are true and that we propel and continue to manifest. But the truth of it is, if they're holding us back and keeping us in suffering, we have to realize that they're not based in truth. And if you think about truth as a synonym to love, and love as a representation of trust and feeling supported and grounded and living as our most bright manifested selves, when we come back to samskaras as lies, or this deeply rooted fear or distrust, or thinking I'll never have enough, I'll never be good enough, going down that rabbit hole, that area of our minds are really what's keeping us back. So we're having this conversation thinking about samskaras as essentially lies that we tell ourselves. And as you step into the observing mind and start to do your own personal practice of self-discovery, I find that you have to carve out time and space for yourself to get really still so that these truths or observational truths that you might be proliferating this lie will come to the surface. So practices like getting into shavasana, or sitting down to meditate, or going on a walk outside without your phone or without music or without some external stimuli, just being alone with your thoughts in any way, shape, or form, whether you're just physically still for a few minutes at a time, going on a walk, getting into nature, what have you. We can allow these things to surface, and we can start to observe where we can work on, how we can uproot these lies in our life so that we can have really healthy soil in our mind and our body, so we can have the garden of our dreams. So we were talking about this, and another beautiful topic that came up was this idea of control. And to me, control is another way we practice fear, thinking that we can control our future, our destiny, our life, and thinking we can control our bodies or other people that we love or anything, right? Thinking control or practicing control is another way to proliferate our fears. So one of the students shared that she had read in the Four Agreements, and then she had heard some people talking about how you have all these parts of your mind that the truth of it is sometimes you have thoughts subconsciously or this kind of awareness or understanding of the world subconsciously that we can't actually be in control of our minds. And she shared that it was really frightening to her initially. And I'm really glad that she brought that up because if we think we can control, at its root, control is fear. But it is in our minds, the way we can understand it, not fear. It's creating strength and creating the life we want. But instead of living in that space of control and ultimately, living from this place of fear, we have to be courageous and brave and face our fears. What if I just let go a little bit in this one thing I really, really feel like I need to control or like to control? What if I look my fear in the eye? What if I get really honest with myself about what is really underneath this need to control and what is coming forward? What are the roots of this expression? So we were talking about the mind and consciousness and all of this stuff and how we are not in control. And, especially in the body in this day and age where we like to practice yoga or fitness or have, goals of health, whether that is treating our bodies right with good food and sleep, or whether it's you have certain body goals or, anywhere on the spectrum. We can't control the things around us, We have the ability to guide our lives and choose a path and make choices. I'm going to work on my sleep. I know that sleep is a really key factor in staying healthy, boosting your immune system, staying calm and anxiety-free, and being the best person I can be. So if I'm going to work on my sleep, that's going to be a goal I have and a path I'm going to walk down. However, if I set this goal for myself on improving my sleep, there could be anything that could get in my way. Maybe a partner snores really loudly, Or maybe there's a thunderstorm in the middle of the night. Maybe there's an ambulance driving by. There's sounds, there's lights. Anything could happen to disrupt this goal of getting the best sleep possible, right? And I think one of the most powerful practices I have welcomed into my life because of all this beautiful yoga philosophy is that one of the most magical things we can do is to do our best and give our best effort in our goals. If I want to sleep my best and like really dive deep into restoration overnight, I'm going to set everything up that I can to make that happen. But the truth of it is I have to surrender from the outcome. So in the yoga practice, again, in the Bhagavad Gita, the same book I'm talking about from the Observer and the Thinker, where that philosophy came from, they're also speaking about this philosophy of give everything you've got. Your work alone is the only thing you can cherish and appreciate and be attached to, your effort, but the results are not your own. And you cannot be attached to the fruit of your labor. You have to give without expecting to receive. And to me, that is practicing trust. Trusting that I'm going to do my best and be a good person for the people I love in my life. And maybe they don't return that to me. Maybe they are not able to step up and be as strong as I am in certain ways. And that's okay. You're a guiding light, for the people that are in your life. And trying to control others to get on your level will never get them there. Inspire them through your actions and love, and they will be growing at their own pace because they're on their own path, right? So anyways, back to this idea of samskaras. We have these deeply rooted patterns within us, and it's really fascinating. We could spend our whole lifetimes working on really simple problems or seemingly simple problems that are so deeply rooted and can take root in every part of our life. So let's say, you constantly go back to an idea of, I do not have enough, or I am not enough, distilling your samskaras down to the root of what they are. So that could be expressed in so many different ways. So like, let's say you have this samskara in your mind that you do not have enough. When you're at work or at school, you might have this underlying fear that if you are not, making the most money or getting the most opportunities or receiving recognition from your boss or from your teacher or colleagues, that you don't have enough, right? If you are constantly feeling like, no one sees me or appreciates me, you might be proliferating this fear inside your mind that you don't have enough love. You don't have the respect and love of the people in your life. And it's a really, really challenging thing because we have to learn how to navigate the reality versus the lies in our mind, or this like kind of skewed perspective we often might have of fear. And you have to, I think, learn how to do this dance between compromising and being like really aware of what your perspective is, if it's maybe skewed, to what reality is. Because you absolutely could be in a position or a situation where you're not appreciated, or you're not having your needs fulfilled, or you're not living to your best. You're not living your life to your best version of yourself, right? So, you have to kind of do this dance between, all right, are these lies in my head full of shit, or is this actual reality? And where do I find the middle ground to propel myself where I want to be, where I want to go forward? And I always think it's best to start with yourself. They say if you want to see change in the world, you have to start with yourself and inspire others. But if you do so much work on yourself, I think you can trust that it'll take you to where you need to go. And instead of relying on other people to fulfill your needs and hopes and dreams, you can create them yourself. And it may not look exactly like what you set out to do a year ago or 5 or 10 years ago. If you're on this path of self work and self discovery, stepping into a greater sense of self confidence and self love, you'll have more strength and more energy to make the hard decisions like, I'm going to leave this job, or I'm going to pursue higher education, or I'm going to change my relationship to this person, to this food, to this sleep, to whatever it is. So if we all just kind of stay in our lane and focus on how we can improve ourselves, then we will be propelled into the place we need to be and the path we should really be thriving and expressing our greatest self on. So, a couple of practices I'd like to share with you to become aware of your samskara. I mentioned earlier, you can do things like just dropping into stillness and shavasana, or just being there, sitting to meditate or lie down, even just giving yourself 5 minutes to let your mind open up to you, asking it, please tell me the truth. What is going on? Those things are really powerful. Walking outside can be really powerful if you're by yourself, especially if you can get into more of a natural setting, like off of the pavement or onto dirt or earth, really connected a little bit closer down to the earth, this really grounding force for us. Another powerful practice I love is to stand in front of a mirror and look myself in the eye and just open up my mind, or, verbally out loud, ask myself, what can I work on? What's holding me back? What is the root of this issue I'm working on? And, another huge practice that can be expressed in so many different ways is ritualizing your behavior. So if you have the same type of routine on a normal basis, whether that's every day, 5 days a week, 1 day a week, whatever, if you're able to ritualize your behavior, you can start to see patterns in yourself. You can start to see where you're on this hamster wheel or these samskaras continue to surface. So let's say you start small by saying, okay, every morning when I wake up, I'm going to look out the window and take 3 deep breaths and see how you feel after that. Or it could be something a little bit bigger, like I'm going to carve out 15 minutes to sit with my morning drink and journal and think about my life. Or it could be even grander, where you have a elaborate, huge morning routine for an hour or two, and you really set up your entire day. You set a foundation for your day by doing the things that will get you into the strongest, clear place. And then you repeat this ritual, whether it's a minute or two or an hour or two, and you're doing the same things and going through the same type of motion, but where the magic lies is the variations that surface in our minds, in our bodies, how we feel differently every day, the emotions that arise. And then over time, you can start to see patterns, like if I feel really physically tight in my body when I wake up, really stiff and uncomfortable, I tend to have the same type of mindset in my head, this kind of mindset of, that's weird, is everything okay? I'm kind of moving into this direction of fear or worry, or asking, what if, that place in which we're living in fear. And if I wake up and I'm feeling really free in my body and open, I can see that I have a more normal pattern of waking up trusting and opening to the day and staying strong. And the hard part about both of these things is to stay open and compassionate to yourself as you fluctuate, because being a human, like we talked about, this intricate web of existence that we have, is just that. It's very intricate and infinite. There's so many different ways we can express ourselves as humans and live. So if we are trying to find an answer on how we can free ourselves, don't start to think about it as boxing yourself in and having this really clear, like 100% here are my boundaries, these are the rules, and this is my life, and I'm not stepping outside of this glass box or glass bubble. Instead, how can you stay open to the changes? And that's where your real confidence and trust in your life will come. And that's where you'll be able to really open up and step into the role of the observer and see your patterns of suffering and free yourself. So thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or online if you want to connect. I'm Madeline Chen on Instagram, and I love talking about philosophy. So if you want to connect a little bit deeper, please do so. But I hope that this was helpful to you. Let this sink in and give yourself a few minutes if you can after this podcast to really digest. Incorporate those practices in your day-to-day and just keep walking towards the brightest version of you. All right, thanks so much. We'll tune back in soon. Namaste.